members. Deputy Speaker.
Are there any constituency statements? And I give the call to the member for Glare.
The closure of the Great Western Highway and the crippling fuel supply emergency mean that the people of the Central West are being systematically strangled by twin crises and treated as second-class citizens. Right now, the National Food Bowl is running on empty and we are about to see a total collapse of the basics. There's an old saying, you reap what you sow. But what can you say to farmers who can't sow because they have empty diesel tanks? If this government can't guarantee the fuel required to put seeds in the ground, it forfeits its right to talk about the cost of living. Because let's be clear, farmers with empty fuel tanks will equal empty supermarket shelves. It's that simple. It's regional and remote areas that have been hit hardest with this national fuel crisis. But for our region, the pain isn't just from the Bowser. It's in the failure of a bridge built by a convict chain gang in 1832 that serves as the main highway in and out of our region. The devastating indefinite closure of the Great Western Highway at Victoria Pass has turned our local communities into a high-stakes traffic experiment. In Lithgow, the safety of our school children is being gambled with every single day passing. We have huge heavy haulage vehicles, thousands of them, diverted off the highway and funneled directly through the heart of Lithgow. Parents and teachers are terrified, and rightly so. We are one tired driver or one mechanical failure away from tragedy. One primary school principal from Lithgow wrote to me and said they are witnessing increasingly impatient and unsafe driver behaviour around the school, and their community feels that they are being left exposed to unnecessary risk. And what about the kids from the Hartley Valley? Their commute has tripled just to get to a classroom. They are spending hours trapped in transit because a bridge built by a convict chain gang in the 1830s is apparently the best option a 21st century government can muster. I've stood with Shannon in Erin's outdoor quality power centre and in the gardens of Margaret and Alan's Maple Springs nursery. I've spoken with Ken Muldoon from Mully's Transport in Hartley. These aren't just impacted stakeholders, they are families watching their bank accounts bleed out. Whether it's Margaret and Alan seeing business vanish by 90%, Shannon struggling to pay his staff, or Ken seeing his fuel cost double while his productivity halves, the message is the same. Enough is enough. The Great Western Highway is not fit for purpose, and we are done with the broken promises and funding heists. Our communities demand of this government today, one, an immediate fuel guarantee for farmers and transport operators in country communities, an immediate slashing of the fuel excise tax until this crisis is over, and three, a support package for businesses across the region hit by the closure of the Great Western Highway. We are sick of the empty words, broken promises. We want action and we want it now.
And I give the call to the member for Aston.
Here.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Last weekend, I had the pleasure of attending two fantastic local events in my electorate of Aston, each of them such a wonderful reminder of what makes our community so special. The first one I attended on Saturday was the St Joseph's and St Bernadette's Community Fete, and it was an excellent celebration of community, connection and local pride. Events like this bring together people of all ages and backgrounds. It creates a vibrant space where local families feel welcome. It was truly heartening to see so many members of the community come out in the bright autumn sunshine and participate and contribute to such a positive atmosphere. And what stood out most were the conversations, the laughter, the sense of belonging and the strong community spirit that flowed throughout the day. I had such a wonderful conversation with 90-year-old Maureen. She told me how she sews beautiful aprons, and she's got such an eye for detail, footy aprons. I bought a St Kilda one because, you know, go Saints, and she was a delight to speak to. I was also pleased to be joined by our new state Labor candidate for the seat of Bayswater, Julie Buxton, for this year's upcoming Victorian state election. And it was clear to me and Julie that locals deeply value opportunities to connect and engage with representatives like us and also with one another. I also had the opportunity to attend the Rowville Men's Shed Open Day, an equally fantastic event that highlighted the vital role men's sheds play in fostering wellbeing, connection and lifeline learning, and also lifelong friendships as well. During my visit, I met up with Stephen and Michael, who were kind enough to assist me with fitting anti-theft number plate screws, a simple yet practical service that reflects the hands-on, community-focused nature of the men's shed. The men's shed also do a bit of beekeeping, so I made sure I bought myself a jar of delicious shed honey. The day itself was full of activity, from guided shed tours and tool sales to impressive displays, exhibitions and even a showcase of nostalgic classic cars. Importantly, the day also offered meaningful opportunities for connection. Initiatives like the Talking Cafe created a welcoming space for conversation, helping to reduce isolation and build friendships, something that is more important than ever in today's fast-paced world. While these events may seem modest in scale, their impact is anything but small. They strengthen social bonds, support mental wellbeing and provide inclusive spaces where people can share skills, experience and support. Deputy Speaker, this past week has been a powerful reminder that when we invest in our community, we are investing in people. And our government remains committed to backing communities like Boronia and Rowville, ensuring they have the resources, opportunities and support they need to thrive. Because strong communities don't just happen, they are built through partnership, through investment and through a shared belief in a better future for all.
Thank you, and I give the call to the member for Ryan.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. We all like to imagine that we'll be cared for when we get older and that we'll be able to access the support that we really need when we need it. In a wealthy country like Australia, that is surely not too much to ask. But last year, the Labor government did a dirty deal with the coalition that protects for-profit care providers and makes life harder for older people and their families. Many older people must pay more for the care they receive or simply make do with less care. With long delays for receiving funding, shamefully, tragically, people will die while they wait. The Greens opposed this scheme at the time, and sadly, since these changes have come into effect, I have heard truly heartbreaking stories from Ryan residents about the deep suffering that these changes have caused. One constituent told me her elderly father has recently suffered a stroke and has been classified as needing the highest level of support at home funding, level 8. However, under the new laws, he still has an 8 to 9 month wait for the funding to arrive. This constituent says there is a high likelihood my father will die before his funding comes through. These are the harsh, tragic realities that the government has imposed on people at the stage of life when they should be being looked after. Not only is the policy itself terrible, but the rollout has been absolutely atrocious. One constituent wrote to me regarding her 82-year-old stepmother, whose funding for vital care services has been consistently delayed. They said, and I quote, "It seems to us that the government is trying to manage costs by agreeing people need and are entitled to a package, but then withholding the money in a sneaky and non-transparent way." 1 in 3 big corporations in Australia are getting away with paying no tax, but instead of going after them, Labor and the Coalition are going after older people who've worked hard and paid their taxes all their lives, older people just trying to get the care that they need to survive. The Greens forced the government to release 20,000 home care packages early, but that is not enough. We've won 2 Senate inquiries into the changes, one of which is still accepting submissions until July. So if you've been affected by these changes, consider making a submission so your story is actually heard. The Greens and I will continue to hold the government to account for the damage they have caused to so many people and their families.
Thank you, and I give the call to the member for Chisholm.
Thank you so much, Deputy Speaker. I love being able to speak about my electorate of Chisholm in this place. I cherish being able to attend cultural events, community activities, and I cherish the work I get to do every single day locally because I get to see how special the people in my community are. In my role, I get to see the excellent commitment people have to their neighbours, the care that they show to others, and I'm very grateful to be invited to so many events right across my electorate. I was really pleased that last week I was able to join the Chinese Association of Monash in their Spring Festival Gala. This was a magnificent event, Deputy Speaker, celebrating the Lunar New Year with traditional dance, song, food and stories. It's in these traditions passed down through generations that we can see how wonderful the diversity in our community is. And it is so generous for people to share with people from non-Chinese backgrounds their cultural heritage. And I am really grateful for that. And I wish everyone a wonderful Year of the Horse in this new year. Last week, I was pleased as well to visit the Wise Employment site in Glen Waverley with Minister Rishworth. There we saw firsthand the work of amazing employment consultants who help give real jobs to people who need it through government programs. They help people to understand what their passions are and what pathways they want to pursue, and they help them to do just that. It's a really important model that we have. I thank the Minister for joining us that day. She's always welcome back in the electorate of Chisholm. Indeed, all ministers are. And I really do want to thank everyone who shared their stories so generously with me and the Minister on that day. Some of their stories and experiences were hard to share, and I'm very grateful that they were able to do so with us so that we can do our jobs even better. So thank you so much. I love our democracy, Deputy Speaker, and on Thursday last week I was so privileged to join students at Wattle Park Primary School in a mock parliament. Our future leaders participated so well, asking excellent questions, and we had a terrific mock debate. I'm very certain that our future is in very safe hands with these young leaders, and I thank them so much for their enthusiasm and passion. Last week, it was great to visit the Inspire Early Learning Journey in Mount Waverley, seeing our early educators hard at work, and it was terrific to read stories to the children, which was absolutely the highlight of my Friday. Thank you so much, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, and I give the call to the member for Nichols.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Over the weekend, I attended a great event, which was the 150th anniversary of the town of Catamatite. Now, Catamatite is a small country town that sits on the Boosie Creek, near the junction with the Broken Creek, about 46 kilometres northeast of Shepparton. Many iconic people have come from Catamatite, including identical twin brothers Rod and Don Kilgour, local media personalities who became sports announcers on GMV6 television, and Don later entered the Victorian Parliament as the member for Shepparton from 1991. And as you enter the town, a sign greets you saying, "Home of the 1995 Stall Gift winner." And that was Glenn Crawford, who won with a time of 11.79 seconds. And Catamatite's got a great reputation as a sporting town. I've attended football training there, and I've attended junior cricket training where I was clean bowled by a young guy, and then I thought, instead of batting, I'll go and try bowling, and a young lady sent the ball back over my head. A considerable distance, and it's also the reigning premier of the Pacola District League. Above all, Catamatite is a great little town. It produces high-quality agricultural produce that goes all around the world. It has weathered drought, changing economies and fluctuations in population, but throughout this, Catamatite has maintained a strong sense of identity and community. And when they had some fire dramas earlier this year, they all banded together to help each other out and get through that crisis. Also, Deputy Speaker, last year, Shepparton Theatre Arts Group celebrated 50 years in existence. Now, Shepparton Theatre Arts Group is an absolute gem of the greater Shepparton and Goulburn Valley area. It has musical productions, it has plays, it has all sorts of events which bring the community together to participate, but also in the audience. They've done some really big things like Grease, My Fair Lady, Jesus Christ Superstar, but also local playwrights have written about issues that affect us. One local playwright, who's a podiatrist, is his day job, but he writes plays when he's not looking at feet. He wrote some great plays, one called Dookie and one called Watershed. And I was actually in Watershed, Deputy Speaker, playing a dairy farmer with a pair of binoculars who was trying to look at a bunch of ladies doing a naked rain dance. I performed that rather well. But it was a wonderful play. It brought the community together. It explored an issue that we were facing, which was our drought and our irrigation system. Congratulations to the Shepparton Theatre Arts Group. Here's to another 50 years of wonderful performances. Thank you.
Thank you, and I give the call to the Minister for Skills and Training.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Today is, of course, the 25th of March, and that means it is Greek Independence Day. And so in my electorate, the local Greek community are gathering to celebrate a day that should be remembered not only by the Greek community, by us all, for its important significance, historically and, of course, looking forward. Now, because I'm here, I, of course, cannot be there, but I do want to recognise the extraordinary influence the Greek Australian community has had in shaping modern Australia. I think it's fair to say that it is an indelible influence, and it's particularly found in that corner of Melbourne's northern suburbs that I'm so proud to represent here. Much of the Greek Australian community arrived following a period of post-war instability in Europe with little to their names other than hope, hard work and aspiration for a better future. And when we fast forward from that time to today, we see an extraordinary immigration success story, deep roots across local communities, thriving businesses, strong families and vibrant cultural institutions and connections to culture that enrich us all. So I say to Secretary George Sakanidis and the entire Greek Orthodox Committee of Whittlesea, Zito I Elada. And Deputy Speaker, we've just celebrated International Women's Day, a critical opportunity for all of us to recognise and to celebrate the contributions of women in our own communities and our own lives and more broadly. It's also vital that we recommit ourselves at this time to the work that must be done to address ongoing gender inequality. And with that in mind, I hosted an International Women's Day event in my electorate of Scullin, a gathering of strong, inspiring women from diverse backgrounds, all in their own way making contributions to Melbourne's northern suburbs and the special community that it is. We were incredibly lucky to be graced with the presence of my great friend and colleague, Assistant Minister Jed Carney, who came and shared her story alongside some local trailblazers like Peter Falau, Tracy Perry and Jude Amatzani. It was also fantastic to have Whittlesea Community Connections and the Epping Endo and Pelvic Pain Clinic, another important women's health initiative to recognise today, on hand to provide tailored assistance. A reminder too about the tangible impact the Albanese government's policies are having on the impact of the lives of Australian women and addressing gender-based inequities. We are, of course, Australia's first women-majority government and together have delivered real progress, a record low gender pay gap, record investments into women's health and safety, extending paid parental leave with super paid on it too so women aren't left behind in retirement. In my own portfolio of skills and training, women are around 60% of free TAFE enrolments. We're breaking down barriers that have held back so many women from getting into previously male-dominated trades. So I want to thank the fantastic speakers and everyone who came along to this IWD event and recommit myself to working towards an equal Australia.
Thank you, and I give the call to the member for Fadden.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise today on behalf of the seniors on the Northern Gold Coast who have done the right thing all their lives and now cannot get the aged care support that they've been assessed as needing. Labor talks a big game about dignity for older Australians, but when it comes to delivery, too many seniors are being left waiting, left confused and left without help. Just last week, I met with David, a community liaison manager for an aged care provider based at the northern end of the Gold Coast. David told me that My Aged Care is still giving out codes to people needing help, but that there is nobody available to deliver those services. In his words, people get the codes and feel happy that help is on its way, but that hope is short-lived because they are then left without real support. He said he spends a fair bit of his time in people's homes advocating for them and calling My Aged Care to seek reassessment for a supported home package, but the process is long and painful. David raised the case of one woman he met in July 2025 who was approved for a Level 4 care package, the highest level of care. Yet by January 2026, she still had not received the funding and sadly now is on end-of-life care. That is not a system that's working as it should. That is a system failing vulnerable Australians at the moment when they needed it the most. He also told me the system is taking 9 to 12 months to process applicants with no guarantee that funding is actually there at the end. The official data shows that, as at the 31st of October 2025, estimated wait times for medium priority approvals were 9 to 12 months. For Level 2 and Level 3 packages, 6 to 9 months. And for Level 4, with 107,281 people still waiting at their approved level. In the same week, I met with Lorraine from Bigger Waters. Lorraine wants to stay in her own home, and that is not an unreasonable ask. That's exactly what this aged care system should do. But because of the changes that have been made, she cannot access the funds and she needs to modify the steps in her home in order to stay there safely. That makes no sense at all. The home modifications should be able to be helping older Australians stay safe and independent at home. I was also contacted by Wendy of Steiglitz on behalf of her mother Merle. This family's ordeal has now stretched to over 6 years, beginning back in 2018. They faced assessment delays, administrative errors, funding delays and separate equipment application processes after funding was finally released. Now, unfortunately, this is not the hallmarks of a successful aged care system, and I would call on the Minister to review where this is all going so wrong.
Thank you, and I give the call to the member for Holt.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise to acknowledge that last Saturday marked the International Day for Elimination of Racial Discrimination. In my electorate of Holt, multiculturalism is a part of everyday life. I see it in our schools, our small businesses, our community organisations, where people from diverse backgrounds come together and contribute to a shared Australian story. Families from all over the world have made Holt their home, bringing with them their cultures, languages and traditions. Diversity is one of our greatest strengths. It enriches our community, strengthens our economy and reflects the best of modern Australia. Last week, I stood with the Prime Minister and colleagues from across our parliamentary team. It was a powerful reminder of what modern Australia looks like at its best. People from different cultures, faiths and backgrounds coming together, united by a shared commitment to our country. It reflected a simple truth. Our diversity makes us stronger, and every Australian deserves to feel safe, respected and included. But I also want to make it clear that racial discrimination has no place in our country. It undermines fairness, damages social cohesion and stands in direct opposite to the values we uphold in this parliament. Labor believes in dignity, respect and a fair go for all Australians, for everyone who lives here, who commits to our nation and to our democracy. I will always stand to ensure you have a place to belong and an opportunity to thrive. Deputy Speaker, the SES recently hosted their Women in Rescue initiative. Over 291 women in Victoria attended this training across 7 sites, including at the Cranbourne SES unit in my electorate. It was a privilege to attend and witness firsthand the skill, professionalism and the dedication of these incredible volunteers. The day showcased the crucial role the Cranbourne SES plays in our community to keep us safe, whether responding to storms, floods or emergencies. What stood out the most was the strong focus on encouraging more women to step forward into operational roles. Programs like Women in Rescue are breaking down barriers, including confidence and ensuring our emergency services better reflect the communities they serve. I want to thank the Deputy Controller, Julie, for inviting me for the day and to all the SES volunteers for their service and commitment. Whether it's responding to floods, storms, earthquakes or landslides, your work embodies the very best of our community spirit and dedication.
Thank you, and I give the call to the member for Parkes.
Deputy Speaker, this week as a Shadow Assistant Minister for Resources, I've been able to meet with a number of organisations during Minerals Week. and attend the Minerals Week Parliamentary dinner in the Grand Hall. This is an important week in Australia's calendar, with events organised by the Minerals Councils of Australia, because mining remains, despite the effort of those opposite, a key driver in our nation's economy. Mining contributed $213 billion to Australia's gross domestic product last year. Deputy Speaker, that's over 8% of our entire economy. Mining directly employs 290,000 Australians and provides almost 11,000 apprenticeships and traineeships each and every year. And for every job in mining, there are another 6 jobs created from manufacturing, in construction, in engineering, in local services and in transport. And in my own electorate of Parks, mining has coexisted with agriculture as a mainstay of our economy for more than 100 years. It's hard to tell the Australian mining story without recalling the history of the Silver City, Broken Hill, where one of the world's largest silver, lead, zinc deposits was discovered back in the 1880s, and BHP was born. In communities like Parks, Gunnedah, West Wyalong, Nyngan, Forbes, Narrabri, Condobolin and Cobar, mining has been the absolute foundation of the community, providing employment, driving growth and funding infrastructure. In 25-26, in the Parks electorate, there were 3,838 full-time mining jobs, $545 million was paid in wages, and there was $1.1 billion in annual direct spending, and the industry supported 874 local suppliers. Agriculture and mining have together built towns and cities across our great nation. And in 23-24, mining-related companies invested more than $660 million in regional programs, including sporting clubs, environmental projects, emergency health services, childcare and community organisations. The Minerals Councils of Australia have advised that in 22-23 financial year, the mining industry paid $74 billion in tax and royalties, making it the biggest taxpayer in our nation. 30% of all company tax collected in that financial year come from mining. That is money for hospitals, for schools, for aged care, for roads, for childcare, police and much, much more. Deputy Speaker, critical minerals are becoming more and more sought after for their role in modern technology, and Australia has strong reserves. The Standing Committee on Primary Industries is inquiring into factors shaping social licence and economic development outcomes in critical minerals projects across the country. This inquiry is now open for submissions, and I encourage individuals and organisations to share their views.
Thank you, and I give the call to the member for Member for Macarthur.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'd like to acknowledge and celebrate a remarkable milestone in our local community, the 70th anniversary of the Campbelltown Theatre Group. For 7 decades, this not-for-profit organisation has been at the heart of the performing arts in Macarthur, and I've been to several fantastic productions put on by them, bringing together people from all walks of life, united by a shared passion for theatre and the performing arts. The Campbelltown Theatre Group was formed following a public meeting on the 21st of June 1956, and less than a year later it staged its very first production, Gilbert and Sullivan's The Pirates of Penzance, at the Town Hall Theatre, then known as the Old Town Hall. That inaugural performance marked the beginning of what has become a rich legacy for Macarthur's creative arts community. Over the past 70 years, the group has presented more than 240 musical and dramatic productions, performing across venues throughout the Macarthur region. And since 1980, it's proudly called the Town Hall Theatre in Queen Street its home. This historic venue stands today not only as a heritage-listed building, but as a symbol of what can be achieved when community and government work hand in hand. Through the leadership of Gordon Fetterplace at the beginning and the dedication of countless members, the group partnered with council and secured government support to transform the former town hall into a dedicated theatre, and it looks fantastic. That effort, supported by funding, volunteer labour and sheer determination, ensured that the arts would have a permanent home in Campbelltown. But the Campbelltown Theatre Group is far more than a performance company. It's a training ground, a creative hub and a welcoming space for aspiring artists of all ages. Through youth programs, workshops and work placement opportunities, it continues to nurture the next generation of performers, technicians and creatives, many of whom have gone on to professional careers in the arts. Today, with more than 130 active members, this group continues to thrive. Just the other week, I attended the opening night of their latest production, Come From Away, which was a terrific performance, and I congratulate all involved in putting it together. It was so professional. The performing, the singing, the music was absolutely wonderful. I would encourage everyone and anyone to go and see this, as well as their other works, including Billy Elliot. Like so many community theatre organisations across Australia, the Campbelltown Theatre Group operates entirely on the dedication of volunteers. Its longevity is a testament to the passion, talent and generosity of those who give their time both on and off the stage. I extend my sincere congratulations to every member, past and present, who's contributed to this extraordinary journey, and I look forward to seeing the Campbelltown Theatre Group continue to flourish for many years to come. I congratulate the Council for its ongoing support, and I look forward to seeing some great productions in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, and I give the call to the Leader of the Nationals in the House.
Well, thank you, Deputy Speaker. And feral animals and invasive species are a menace to Australia's biodiversity and agricultural production. They are costing us $1 billion per year in lost agricultural production. And this is an issue, Deputy Speaker, where we're simply not doing enough at state and federal government level. We need more boots and less suits. That's more boots on the ground doing active environmental management and pest animal control, and less suits in the cities making excuses. Because just this week, Deputy Speaker, I was contacted by a fifth-generation farmer in my electorate from the area of Benambra, a fellow by the name of Stuart. And he sent me photos of the wild dog carnage on his property from just one night. Now, it's confronting, but it is the reality of a lack of wild dog control measures to see the impact on his sheep flock. Now, people who may not be familiar with farming and don't like the idea of wild dogs being shot or wild dogs being trapped or the use of aerial baits should go out and join my constituent Stuart when he walks out into the paddock in the morning and deals with the stock losses. Stuart told me the state government rolled back the highly successful wild dog aerial baiting program in the last fortnight, and he says now is the perfect time to bait, as all the young dogs are out on their own and they're the ones doing the damage. Now, given all the regular issues that we deal with in this industry, we certainly can't afford the time and the cost of this dog issue getting out of hand again. And so, Deputy Speaker, what I'd say is the social and the economic cost of wild dogs to our sheep flock is enormous, and to our farmers themselves. In terms of the mental health and the stress, just imagine working all day to care for your stock, going home at night and grabbing a bite to eat, and then grabbing your rifle and your thermal scope and heading out again to try and control wild dogs. That is the lived reality for farmers in my electorate. Now, the last time the dogs were this bad was around 2010, when in a flock of, say, 1,000 sheep, you could lose 20 to 30 ewes in one night. Now, that was at a time when sheep were valuable, but nothing like the prices they're getting today. So in today's market, a lamb can be worth up to $300, and a ewes can be around $250 to $350 per head. So in a bad night, if it gets back to the way it was in 2010, you could see a loss of between $7,500 and even up to $15,000 if the ewe is pregnant, just in one night. This is the lived reality of farmers in my electorate right now when it comes to controlling the wild dog problem. So, Deputy Speaker, I acknowledge this is primarily a matter for the state government, but the federal government does have a role to play here. The federal government does have a role to play in the way we provide funding for natural resource management and the control of invasive and feral species. Wild dogs are an enormous social and economic cost to our community, and both levels of government need to be working together to use every available lever to control the problem before it gets completely out of hand once again.
Thank you, and I give the call to the member for Dixon.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Saturday was World Down Syndrome Day, a day to recognise the incredible contributions of people with Down syndrome. I would like to take this opportunity to tell you the story of Owen Gibson, who I recently had the pleasure of meeting at my office in Strathpine. Owen's story is one of determination, possibility and a love of work. Owen is an employment ambassador for Down Syndrome Australia, and he's an advocate for their Employment Connections program. Owen talked to me about how much he values his job working at Coles. He's not just an employee, he is a valued and integral member of the team, having been trained across all departments within the store. Owen's on full wages, as he should be, and is supported in his professional development in exactly the same way as any other employee. He has the ability to try different roles, receive ongoing training, and discover what works for him and his team the best. That kind of opportunity to grow, to contribute, to prosper, and to be truly seen in the workplace matters enormously. Owen believes, and I agree wholeheartedly, that everyone should have the right to work and prosper, including people with Down syndrome, and that if we support each other, anything is actually possible. Deputy Speaker, for people with a disability, employment is about so much more than just a job. It is financial freedom, it is independence, it is dignity and worth. Sadly, over decades, we have not done enough to encourage and support people with a disability to get into the workforce. And while in the past few years the statistics have come up a bit, we still have a lot more work to do to ensure that people who want a job can get into the workforce and can support their families become financially independent. A new report released today by E61 Institute reinforces just how transformative the right support can be. It found that people who have access to the NDIS and the right supports perform significantly better in the workforce than they did before receiving government-funded support. NDIS participants work nearly 2 hours more per week within 4 years of entering the scheme and earn an extra $76 per fortnight. As a result, they are less likely to rely on unemployment payments, and importantly, they report feeling better and having higher energy levels. Stories like Owen's and data like this remind us why Labor's investment in the NDIS is so important and why we will always continue to protect it.
Thank you, and I give the call to the member for Cowper.
Well, thank you, Deputy Speaker. I'd like to take this opportunity to talk up beautiful Port Macquarie, a rapidly expanding regional city that deserves acknowledgement of its recent accelerated growth and future potential. Now, Deputy Speaker, Port Macquarie has always been a tourism hotspot. If you haven't been there, you should go. But in recent years, more and more of its once seasonal visitors have opted to stay permanently, with a growth rate in Port Macquarie West of 17.3% since the start of 2021. And it's not hard to see why. Not only is it a coastal city filled with natural beauty, but it continues to enhance and expand its employment opportunities and services, evolving to cater to both young and old. Once upon a time, it was heralded as a retirement capital, but now it's attracting more and more families than it ever has before, and it's easy to see why, because we have some of the best public schools and impressive independent schools like the Nature School, the Steiner School and St Columba. The range and choice on offer certainly puts it at the top of the list in New South Wales. Couple that with the state-of-the-art Charles University campus that is well on its way to doubling its intake by 2030, and University of New South Wales Clinical Campus at the base hospital as well. Yet, Deputy Speaker, despite these obvious indicators of accelerated sustained growth, the congestion chaos at this burgeoning regional city's most critical entry points continues to grow worse with every passing month due to lack of care and investment by this Labor government and the state Labor government. The Wrights Road and the Lake Road roundabouts leading to the health and education precincts, in fact those that I've just referred to, have long been flagged as the worst areas and the most dangerous bottleneck, impacting not only commuters but more importantly ambulances attempting to get to the hospital. And that's why under the Coalition, prior to 2022, we allocated $5 million to settle a feasibility study for those areas. But with the change of government, that funding decision was reversed, and despite continued unified calls by the local, state and federal representatives, nothing has happened. So I'm asking on behalf of my communities to the state and federal Labor government,
Why are you ignoring the needs of a rapidly expanding regional city with so much to offer? We deserve so much more.
Thank you, and I give the call to the member for Dunkley.
Deputy Speaker, I rise today to speak about a matter deeply close to my heart, empowering the next generation of leaders in Dunkley. Before entering Parliament, I spent more than 20 years as a youth worker across local, state and national government. I worked alongside young people and dedicated professionals to build programs that created real opportunities for young people to grow, connect and reach their potential. My passion for this work is personal. As a young person, I experienced family violence and sexual abuse. It led to disconnection from school and shattered my confidence. Through family support, education, counselling and ballet, I was able to rebuild my life. My lived experience drives my determination to ensure young people from every background receive the support they need to build resilience, develop skills and rise above adversity. In my first speech, I committed to advocating for young people. Over the past 2 years, that commitment has only grown stronger because now, in a time of social, economic and political uncertainty, many young people feel powerless and overwhelmed by the scale of the challenges before them. That is why I am proud to report to the House that I have taken a meaningful step forward through the Dunkley Emerging Leaders Program. Last week, I held the first session of this pilot program for young adults aged 18 and over who are passionate about advocacy, change-making and leadership. The program is grounded in experiential learning, helping participants build confidence, self-understanding and a strong sense of purpose. In the months ahead, participants will develop practical leadership skills, learn to think critically, engage with civic and political systems, and gain confidence in public speaking. We will hear from Professor Rod Glover, Senator Lisa Darmanin, and Speaker of the House, Milton Dick. They will also deepen their resilience, emotional literacy, and capacity for self-care, qualities essential for any leadership journey. Deputy Speaker, this program is about empowering young adults to contribute meaningfully to their communities and to drive positive change. When we invest in young people, we invest in the future of our nation. You cannot be what you cannot see, and we hope this program helps young people see what is possible and turn belief into action.
Thank you, and I give the call to the member for Groom.
Thank you, Speaker. Australians are right to be angry about the cost of living. They feel it every single day, at the checkout, in their power bills, in their rent, in the cost of getting to work. And when you strip it back, one truth sits underneath it all: energy is the economy. When energy gets more expensive, everything gets more expensive. And over the past few years, we've made a decision, a political decision, to rebuild our entire energy system around emissions targets. Not around cost, not around reliability, not around what works for Australian families. And that decision has consequences. We're forcing early coal-fired power plant closures before firming replacement is ready. That reduces supply. And when supply goes down, price goes up. We've built an energy system that's dependent on the weather, which means we now need to duplicate the entire grid with backup generation, transmission lines and storage. Now that's not cheap. It's one system becoming two, and we're paying for them both. We've seen billions of dollars in subsidies flow into projects that cannot stand on their own. And those costs don't disappear. They're paid for one way or another by Australian households. We've created a system where industry, the businesses that make things, that employ people and anchor our communities, are now paying some of the highest energy prices in the developed world. And that flows straight through to household budgets. Higher fertiliser costs, higher freight costs, higher grocery prices, higher rents as a result of construction costs rising. This is not abstract. This is the weekly shop. And that's why back in 2021, when Australia signed up to net zero, I took a different path. Not because I don't care about the environment, but because the engineer in me could see where this was heading. A system built on higher costs, a system that weakens our industrial base and that makes Australia more dependent, not less. There is no strong country without a strong economy. There's no strong economy without low-cost, reliable energy. From steel to fertiliser, transport to manufacturing, energy sits underneath it all. So if we want to ease the cost of living, if we want to rebuild our economy, if we want to be a country that makes things again, then we have to be honest about what's gone wrong. We cannot keep pretending that higher cost energy will somehow magically deliver a lower cost of living. It won't. It will not. The path forward is simple, but it requires courage. We must rebuild our energy system around the core principles of affordability and security. That means using the resources we have, coal, gas, and where it stacks up, new technologies, to deliver the lowest possible cost to households and businesses. Because the best cost of living policy you will ever see is cheap energy. And until we get that right, everything else will keep getting harder.
And I give the call to the member for Leichhardt.
Thank you, Speaker. On Thursday last week, we were informed that Tropical Cyclone Narelle had reached Category 5 levels. This is an incredibly dangerous system with winds up to 250 kilometres an hour and the potential to impact right across Cape York Peninsula. On Thursday, we hit the phones, calling into the communities of Lockhart, Cowan, Cooktown, Hopevale, Wujal, Arakoon, Weipa, Pomperau, Napranum and Marpoon to ensure that they were prepared and ready for what was coming. It went from bad to worse. A small but powerful system was bearing down in looking to hit Cowan directly and then move across the Cape. We were spared the worst of it. Princess Charlotte Bay is shallow. It sucked some of the power out of Narelle. It arrived as a Category 4 and rapidly diminished once it hit the land. It also took a hard right and spared Cowan, taking out some of the stations, a lot of damage to shed infrastructure, and a couple was stranded on the Moreton Telegraph for a day or so while the flood waters from the Wenlock rose. On Saturday, I flew up to Cowan to meet with Premier David Crisafulli, the member for Cook, and Mayor Robin Holmes. All three levels of government were available for the people of Cowan to have a chat to. What we found in Cowan was a community that was resilient and happy. They were grateful that they were spared the worst of the cyclone, but they were prepared. This is not our first rodeo. We do cyclones fairly regularly. And the thing about the far north, and the thing that I'm most proud of, is how our community bands together in times like these. There are new community members in Cowan. It was their first cyclone. And Sarah, who runs the bush pantry there, her husband, they broke down one day actually, and they decided to stay in Cowan because there wasn't a mechanic in town. Mike was a mechanic, so he bought the place. It was their first cyclone, and they were so impressed at how the entire community got together and made sure that everyone was going to be safe for the upcoming storm. On Sunday, I went to Weipa to inspect the damage there. Same thing. The north is resilient and the north survives. I do want to illustrate a story which I think shows who we are as the far north. On Thursday night, I got a text from Cowan. Preparations are good, we're in the pub. Okay, couldn't fault the logic. On Friday, during my phone calls to all of the communities to make sure everyone was okay, the mayor of Lockhart River was on the plant, but my favourite text was again from Cowan on Friday night. We're all good, the power's back on, we're back in the pub. Fantastic. A full circle moment. I love the far north and the resilience that we show and the way that we look after each other, and it just shone through again. Thank you.
Thank you, and I give the call to the member for Mitchell.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise with great concern over the recent fuel and oil shocks that are causing an increase in inflation and cost of living crises for Australians. But what is most important for Australia to remember is what we can only control what is inside our control as a country, not be blown about by things that are happening overseas. Yes, we have a war in Iran. Yes, we have a war in Ukraine. Yes, we now have an oil shock and a fuel crisis. But the consequences of the government abandoning the productivity challenge from the day they got re-elected, they said productivity was their first concern, and giving it up so easily has ongoing effects for our economy. Have a think about Trevor in West Bennett Hills in my electorate, who emailed me and said his electricity bill just went up 33%, that he just got year on year. Have a think about all the small businesses in my electorate who tell me now that to get something off the docks, off the waterfront for import-exposed businesses is now a 3-month wait. Now, I've contacted the Minister and his staff are very helpful. My former agencies in Home Affairs, very helpful people. But our lack of productivity on the waterfront means that these businesses have faced 3-month waits, and that's still not the resolution. They don't know if they will have their goods 3 months off the docks. Declining productivity in Australia means directly each of those small businesses affected in my electorate, 3 of them that have contacted me just this month, desperate to get those supplies off the waterfront, means that the cost of each one of those services and the viability of those businesses is in severe threat. And nobody treats that like a crisis. When we have the world's highest wages and we have people on the waterfront increasing wages constantly, we have no link to productivity. Why can't we demand more productivity from our waterfront? Why can't we get those things out of the cargo containers and to the businesses so they can keep their businesses going? No one answers that. That's not a crisis. We're dealing with other crises. Well, I can tell you, declining productivity, free-fall productivity over time is the biggest economic crisis we face, because the cost of everything is going up. For God's sake, rents are unaffordable for ordinary people. Beer is unaffordable. Let's have a look at that. Historically speaking, beer is one of the cheapest staples in world history. It is now almost unaffordable for Australians. Beer. We talk about it here in pubs, and we've heard members here talking about pubs. Well, beer is virtually unaffordable for the average Australian right now. This is free-fall, declining productivity. The Treasurer said it was his #1 challenge, and then he dropped it like a lead balloon within 5 minutes. We haven't heard this government speak about productivity since. I give this example of my constituents struggling directly. They're genuine, great import-exposed small businesses. They cannot get their products off the docks. Everyone's trying to help, but no one's doing anything about the problems. Productivity. We must be able to do better as a country, or our prices and our inflation will continue to increase the cost of all basic goods and services, which is a disaster for our economy.
Thank you, and I give the call to the member for Richmond.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. And last week I invited the Minister for Social Services back to the North Coast to visit Kurungal Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Corporation to talk with their amazing team about how the Albanese Labor government's increased funding for their organisation will support our local community. Our government has increased emergency relief grant funding for Kurungal by 41% to support them in delivering a range of culturally appropriate community-based services. The services include emergency relief, community pathway connector programs, as well as supporting individuals with mental health concerns and transitioning to the NDIS and other services. Kurungal has a strong track record of working closely with family, friends, support people, carers and other services on behalf of community members to ensure that locals receive culturally appropriate support and their health and well-being is addressed in a holistic manner. I'd like to say a very, very big thank you to the chairperson of Kurungal, Auntie Joyce Summers, and the whole team for the vitally important work that you continue to do to help support our local community in accessing services. And thank you so much for welcoming the Minister and myself last week. Now, Deputy Speaker, also earlier this month I had the great pleasure of greeting Matilda, our very own local mobile wildlife hospital, as she and her team arrived at Parliament House in Canberra. And what a treat that was for everyone. I also invited the Minister for Environment and Water to meet the whole team and see the incredible work they do utilising Australia's only mobile wildlife hospital, which operates inside a fantastic custom-built semi-trailer. And I know many members and senators were able to visit Matilda during that week. It was a wonderful visit. I can report, Deputy Speaker, that the Minister for Environment and Water who visited is very fond of Digby, a 9-month-old wombat, and he was very impressed also by the terrific volunteers and workers who were nursing Digby back to health after an accident. And it just is a great example of the incredible work that Byron Wildlife Hospital do. Now, Matilda and the team are on a tour throughout the entire country. They're visiting New South Wales, Victoria, the ACT, as I said, Tasmania, South Australia and Western Australia. They're on tour to demonstrate and showcase the mobile capacity to assist wildlife impacted by natural disasters, disease outbreaks and accidents as well. Now, while Matilda is on tour, the Byron Bay Wildlife Hospital continues to do their work tirelessly from their permanent base in Lennox Head, which is in my electorate of Richmond. And I'm very pleased to have worked with the Byron Wildlife Hospital over many years, and also very proud to have delivered on my 2025 election commitment of $2 million for the expansion of operations of the Byron Bay Wildlife Hospital. By providing funding for Australia's only mobile wildlife hospital, our government is helping to ensure they continue to provide that very important care to injured wildlife through surgery, intensive care, x-rays, ultrasound and other facilities so they can continue their amazing work. So I want to say a really big thanks to all the team at Byron Wildlife Hospital and happy travels, Tilly, as you continue around the country. You're doing a great job.
Thank you, and I give the call to the member for Page.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I'd like to acknowledge and celebrate the 90th birthday of the Casino Greyhound Club. First race meeting was held at the now Queen Elizabeth Park in 1936. The Northfield family are notorious in our local greyhound community. Pop Northfield was a key driver behind greyhound racing in the Northern Rivers. His son Billy trained champions like Pretty Short, which won 58 races in its career, and his grandsons Mitch, Charlie, Brad and Glenn, along with the wider family, have carried on this legacy. I'd particularly like to acknowledge Mitch, who is currently the President, Secretary Donna Pizzette and past employees with significant contributions such as Don Waldron, Bruce Knight and Ronnie Hurd for their leadership and service to the club. Because of this dedication and support of local trainers and the community, the Casino Greyhound Club continues to thrive as a hub for racing. Congratulations to the committee, the staff and the volunteers over a remarkable 90 years. Deputy Speaker, I'd like to acknowledge and congratulate the Country Women's Association's Casino branch for their 100th birthday. For a century, the women of Casino CWA have been at the heart of our community, from establishing vital health and welfare services to their participation in Primex, the Casino Show, community fundraising stalls, the Casino Golf Club markets. The group have provided ongoing support for community organisations in Casino. I'd also like to acknowledge the dedicated branch executive and president Jane Flick, Secretary Janet Henderson, Treasurer Jennifer Baker and Cultural Officer Denise Crouch, along with all the Casino branch members. Also like to recognise two Life members, Rita Nichols for 40 years and Anne Bailey, a Far North Coast Group patron and Life member of 69.5 years, celebrating her 100th birthday in September. Thank you to all the members, past and present, for your leadership, dedication to the Casino CWA. Deputy Speaker, I'd like to acknowledge Darren Crispin from Grafton, who this weekend will take on a 24-hour tennis travel challenge in support of the Love Your Sister charity. Darren is a generous coach at the Junction Hill Tennis Club and a driving force behind the club, always giving his time to students and backing those doing it tough. Cancer is something he holds close, having lost loved ones, and that's what is driving his fundraising. Last year, he completed a 12-hour marathon, raising over $25,000. This year, after 12 months of training, he has taken up a 24-hour challenge. Through initiatives like ACES for the community and Bridges of Hope walks, Darren continues to bring people together to support others in need. I'd like to acknowledge his wife Karen, his children Natasha, Nick, Josh, BJ and their partners for their support. Darren, this is a remarkable effort and the community is right behind you. Thank you.
Thank you, and I give the call to the member for Gellibrand.
Well, thank you, Speaker. And Saturday, 21st of March, was the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. And this is a day that all Australians can be proud of. It's a day to be proud to be Australian, because Australia is a country that has made terrible mistakes in our history with respect to race. Indeed, the first substantive bill passed by this parliament after Federation was the Immigration Restriction Act, better known today as the White Australia Policy. But Australia's greatest strength as a country is our ability to change as a democracy, to recognise mistakes and to set a new course. And this is what Australia has done as a nation. We have recognised the mistakes and the dead end that race-based politics can lead a country down, and we've corrected it. We've gone from a country that passed a White Australia policy at the moment of Federation to become a modern Australia, the most successful multicultural nation on earth. Today, the parliament that first passed that Immigration Restriction Act includes 17 members of parliament with Asian heritage, 10 from the government side, and I was so proud to see them all come together for a celebratory photo last week. The parliament includes 8 members of parliament with Indigenous heritage, something that would have been unimaginable at the moment of Federation. We can be so proud as Australians of the journey we have taken as a nation, of the country that we have built together. A country drawing on 60,000 years of Indigenous heritage, a country leveraging the Westminster institutions of our democracy and our rule of law to change and recognise mistakes, and a country where now half of us are either born overseas or have a parent born overseas, enriched by that multicultural migration. A country that can cheer on Sam Kerr as the captain of the Matildas at the Asian Cup with Indian heritage. A country that can cheer on Jason Day at the Masters, a magnificent world-class golfer with Filipino heritage. A country that can cheer on Saya Sakakibara and Arisa True, gold medal winning Asian Australians at the Olympics. A country that can celebrate rosé as part of Blackpink. A country where Terry Tao can become a maths prodigy and our first Fields medal winner. Where Jack Zhang can found Airwallex, a company worth $12 billion, and Melanie Perkins can co-found Canva, a company worth $60 billion. Some things never change though. In 1996, Pauline Hanson said that, quote, all Asian immigration should stop. They have their own culture, religion, form ghettos and do not assimilate. Just imagine what Australia would have missed out on if we'd followed her advice 30 years ago. My family, my electorate, my country is a better place for rejecting divisive race-based politics, and modern Australia is a country we've all built together and we can all be proud of.
I thank the member. In accordance with Standing Order 193, the time for members' constituency statements has concluded, and I call the clerk.
Government business, next order of the day. Crimes and other legislation amendment, Omnibus number 1, Bill 2026, resumption of debate on second reading.
The question is that the bill now be read a second time, and I call the member for Deakin.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The bill before us today is about keeping Australians safe, which has to be the primary concern of every member of this parliament. This bill updates and improves pieces of crime-related legislation, including amendments to the Crimes Act, the Criminal Code Act, Director of Public Prosecutions Act, the Extradition Act, and, Deputy Speaker, a lot of these changes are quite technical in nature. They're quite... But then you read through the bill and there are a number of very significant and important changes too, which I'd like to go through in turn. The common thread, they are all about keeping Australians safe. Schedule 1 is about making amendments to modernise the law around enforcement and the procedures that allow our agencies to operate more efficiently.
If the member for Deakin could just pause. A division has been called in the House. The proceedings are suspended to enable honourable members to attend to the division. The proceedings will resume when the chair of the Federation Chamber is resumed at the conclusion of the division and subsequent divisions. Member for Deakin, in continuation.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Part 1 of the bill lists Sydney's West Airport as a major airport to empower the Australian Federal Police to exercise the necessary powers at the airport. These powers already apply to every other major airport in the country, and this amendment does not create new powers. It simply extends it to the new airport in Sydney's West and is a completely common sense change. Part 2 of Schedule 1 clarifies that specific warrants and orders contained in the Crimes Act can also be made electronically. This is so officers are not having to waste time going to court, filling out hard copy forms, and also making it easier to obtain these important warrants and orders outside of ordinary court hours, really improving the efficiency of the law enforcement and making sure that we're keeping pace with modern lodgement practices. Again, a common sense change. It's addressing really just major issues with in-person lodgement, which is eminently sensible. Part 3 extends the sunset date for 3 sets of warrants: the network activity warrants, data disruption warrants, and account takeover warrants, as well as emergency authorisations. So these, originally set to expire in September this year, will be extended to 2029, and that will enable the government to complete its more exhaustive package of reforms to these areas, but will ensure the preservation of the status quo up until that time. So again, a very important change. Another aspect to those warrants is that data disruption warrants will fall outside of the powers of the Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission. This is to reflect the fact that they are now focused on being an intelligence-gathering organisation, so disruption is really outside of their purview, and that reflects the independent review of the relevant legislation as well. We go into other parts of the Act, looking at drug laws. So these are aligning practices at a Commonwealth level with those of the states. So instead of measuring criminal culpability based on the purity of a substance, we're simply allowing the inclusion of the total weight of any mixed substance. For example, if cocaine is mixed with pseudoephedrine, you can count the whole lot as cocaine. This is to really reflect the common sense culpability of those involved in it, and prevents unnecessary time and money being spent really assessing the purity of the substance, when really that is not a relevant fact and issue when it comes to these criminal offences. There's also changes to evidence provisions which enable the issuing of a certificate which really confirms the chain of custody after drugs have been taken away and prior to prosecutions. Currently, individual officers all have to write written reports. They also have to be available to give oral evidence in court. This is exhaustive and, frankly, fundamentally unnecessary. This doesn't undermine the right to a fair trial. If someone wants to contest the processing of a particular drug in court, they're still entitled to do so, but this enables a simplified approach, which means, again, trials can be focused on relevant facts and issue and not sidetracked with these unnecessary administrative burdens. Another small reform that I neglected to mention in relation to Schedule 1 is the continuation of the Australian Capital Territory Police's powers around pre-charge detention and investigation. When these provisions were originally drafted, the ACT had envisioned that it would be introducing its own regime, but as time's gone on, it's become evident the Commonwealth regime will do, so this just continues status quo for them as well. So Schedule 3, again, a fairly uncontroversial change. So the Director of Public Prosecutions Act, currently if there's a perception or a reality of conflict of interest, the only option is for the Director of Public Prosecutions to step down so someone else can step up. This effectively empowers the Attorney General, if such a conflict is raised, to be able to appoint someone temporarily to address that conflict without the current hoo-ha, which is again a very common sense piece of reform, and also just changes the title to Associate Director of Public Prosecutions. Change the title of the Associate Director of Public Prosecutions to Deputy Director of Public Prosecutions. It's using language similar to that seen in other departments as well. Extradition legislation will also be changed, so that is really the powers of police to arrest people who are the subject of orders from foreign countries, either seeking to prosecute them or to ensure that they serve their sentence in imprisonment. Often we're talking about serious offenders, so this will enable police to effectively exercise powers of arrest, similar to that already seen in crimes legislation in Australia. This reflects the fact that we're often talking about individuals who have committed very serious offences, and it's allowing that fair and proportionate use of police powers of entry and arrest, and making sure that, only in circumstances where, for example, that there is a need to capture someone between 9 p.m. and 6 a.m. in the morning, that police have to exercise proper discretion and make sure that that's eminently necessary. So it's ensuring a proportionate framework, but nevertheless rigorous application of those powers. There's also rule changes around those who have waived their extradition rights. So this is ordinarily an administrative process that people go through when a country requests that someone be sent back to another country. There is a formal review process. A person can waive that administrative process. And so this enables that in a more direct way, at the same time as allowing those individuals to be kept in detention until such a time as they're handed over to the other country, where they'll either face prosecution or imprisonment as well. Schedule 5 amends the Telecommunications Interceptions Act. This is a very technical amendment. So in Victoria, what was formerly known as the Victorian Inspectorate is now known as Integrity Oversight Victoria, and that simply reflects that change. So these are fairly common sense changes to the law, as we've seen so far, so it's something that I absolutely commend. Particularly the changes around drug legislation is incredibly important for efficiency's sake, really ensuring that the trial process is rigorous and focused on the criminal culpability of the individuals involved, and not really not allowing a discount in culpability simply because of impurities in a substance. But it's also proportionate because it prevents double charging. So if there are two substances that are governed by these legal regimes, you're not going to be charged for having both substances separately. You treat it as one. So for example, pseudoephedrine and cocaine mixed together in a powder, you would just treat that as a packet of cocaine. You wouldn't have one charge for pseudoephedrine, one charge for cocaine. It simplifies the process. It reflects the way the states have worked for a very, very long time. And just it is common sense enforcement that really reflects the culpability of the offenders involved. So this enables a more rigorous and robust enforcement. It's not awarding impurity, it's not awarding dodgy drug dealing practices. This is really just ensuring that the criminality is properly reflected in the way things are prosecuted, and really facilitating a better and more efficient criminal justice process by enabling prosecutions to be focusing on evidence of probative value to whether someone is guilty and culpable of an offence, and not with technical administrative issues. The same is true in relation to the warrants and orders. This is about making a better, more efficient justice system, improving the way criminal justice works in Australia, and is something that ought to be commended. I want to pay tribute to the Attorney-General, who is doing a lot of work dealing with crime. This is something that's incredibly important to I know my community and communities around Australia. The Albanese government is working incredibly hard. We have a no-nonsense approach to this kind of criminality. This is one of many reforms that the government is going through to ensure that we have a rigorous criminal justice process, and ensuring that our law enforcement agencies have the powers, tools, clarity and certainty they need to do their jobs effectively. So I commend the Attorney-General, and I commend this bill to the House.
I thank the member. The question is the bill now be read a second time, and I call the member for Sturt.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise to speak in support of the Crimes and Other Legislation Amendment Omnibus Bill No. 1 of 2026. At its heart, this bill is about supporting law enforcement agencies to provide efficient and effective services to Australians to keep them safe. Law enforcement agencies play a critical role in the functioning of our communities and of our country, and they need to be appropriately equipped to carry out their functions with appropriate, reasonable and proportionate safeguards as well. Now, when I am out and about in my community, I've received some feedback of a general nature that crime, particularly opportunistic crime, is on the rise, and that people feel just that little bit less safe generally. Car theft, petty robbery, low-level property damage and general antisocial and threatening behaviour is on the rise. Opportunistic crimes committed randomly and without pre-planning cause fear within communities, reducing connection, increasing scepticism and undermining cohesion. Deliberate targeted crime does this too, just on a much more significant scale. Cost of living pressures, social issues that are still lingering from the pandemic, and the development of technology that facilitates, for example, car theft or the duplication of garage remote codes means that opportunistic and deliberate crime is happening and police resources are stretched. Australians do not want police resources to be so stretched that difficult decisions about which call-outs to attend, which offences to investigate and which offences to prosecute need to be made any more than is absolutely necessary. No one wants that, and this bill contains measures to assist with this. Firstly, however, the criminal law. There are many different purposes to criminal law. First and foremost is the maintenance of social order. Criminal law plays a critical role in keeping things in order within a society. As society changes, which it does regularly, then clear definitions surrounding what behaviours are harmful and disruptive and thus off limits are important. This helps to set boundaries and acts as a deterrent against committing crimes or aiding in the commission of crimes. This makes communities safer and more predictable. It also helps to hold people to account for their actions by ensuring that people who commit crimes face consequences. This also facilitates trust and confidence in the criminal law system because it demonstrates fairness to the wider population, demonstrates that everyone is subject to the same rules, and also limits people taking justice into their own hands, which is a very dangerous approach on many levels. Ensuring victims receive justice is a second key purpose of the criminal law. I recently met someone in my electorate of Sturt who had been the victim of a very serious crime, and her two main drivers going forward were justice for herself, to be heard, and to have the effect that the serious crime had on her to be soundly understood. And the second driver was to share her story so that lessons could be learned and strategies put in place to minimise the prospects of what had happened to her from happening to anyone else. When victims do not feel heard or feel like nothing was done in response to what happened to them, there is a loss of trust and confidence in the police, the courts, and all operators in the justice system. And issues and offences are less likely to be reported, potentially leading to escalation and the sense amongst perpetrators that it is possible to get away with offending. Now, in this respect, the third key purpose of the criminal law is the rehabilitation of offenders. This is important because it offers opportunities for offenders to reintegrate into society and become, once again, productive members of the community. If the underlying causes of criminal behaviour can be addressed through rehabilitation, then the prospects of reoffending are lowered, which is a good thing for the entire community. Through rehabilitation, the criminal justice system is motivated to break the cycle of crime and promote meaningful and sustainable positive change for both individuals and communities. Fourthly, deterrence and punishment. The goal of deterrence is to discourage members of society from committing criminal offences, and the fear of punishment is the general deterrence and discouragement mechanism. Deterrence is, however, only effective if a person has the capacity to reflect. And because many people commit crimes in the heat of the moment, this is one of the major obstacles for deterrence in criminal justice. And this is why implementing punishments and making them publicly known as a form of education is an equally important part of deterrence, because it sends the message that all criminal acts will be punished, that authorities are motivated to catch offenders and punish them, and also that Australians quite rightly expect this and quite rightly deserve this. Now, finally, the criminal law, particularly the way it operates in this country, is complete with safeguards, thresholds, clear processes, and an emphasis on procedural fairness and protection of the rights of individuals. Innocent until proven guilty, or the presumption of innocence, is a fundamental principle of the criminal justice system in Australia, and it must remain forever so, no matter what the alleged offence is. The minute we start picking and choosing who is entitled to the benefit of this principle is the minute we turn our backs on core legal principles and core human rights and invite false accusations, and for the state as the prosecuting authority to punish individuals without justification. Our criminal law system, including the measures in this bill, guards against this. Equally, the appellate process, where decisions of courts of first instance are appealable on certain grounds, operate to correct mistakes or injustices where they have occurred. And the standard of proof in criminal offences beyond reasonable doubt is the right standard when punishment may involve the deprivation of liberty. No other standard is appropriate, and as difficult as this is sometimes to accept, it is better to let a guilty person go free than to convict an innocent individual. It is this notion that underpins the standard of proof of beyond reasonable doubt. With such a high threshold, the likelihood of a potentially guilty individual walking free increases, but it also makes it that much more difficult for an innocent individual to be wrongly convicted of a crime. Now, this bill, containing all of the safeguards and thresholds as it does with its 5 schedules, speaks to the purposes of criminal law and also speaks to the idea that it's important to continually examine whether the criminal law in this country remains true to those purposes and whether it is contemporary in its approach to societal changes and whether it provides adequate powers and resources to ensure that the criminal justice system operates effectively. So the 5 schedules. Firstly, Schedule 1, which deals with police powers and warrants. The bill will amend the Crimes Act to enable the Australian Federal Police to exercise critical powers at the new Western Sydney International Airport, ensuring a consistent policing and security framework at major airports nationwide, and it will modernise the way law enforcement agencies can apply for search warrants and assistance orders to better align with today's digital operating environment, but without affecting the substantive thresholds and safeguards already in existence around these processes. Secondly, in Schedule 2 to the bill, there are critical amendments to the Criminal Code that are directed at ensuring that the prosecution of serious drug offences is efficient and effective. And this includes the implementation of an evidentiary certificate which allows prima facie evidence of specific facts, normally technical or formal in nature, to be provided and proved without calling a witness. The amendments also change the way that drug threshold quantities are measured. The current purity approach, which does not reflect how drugs are typically trafficked, will be replaced with mixed quantity requirements. Schedule 3, another safeguard, contains amendments that streamline the process for managing an actual, perceived or potential conflict of interest identified by the Director of Public Prosecutions, meaning that a sufficiently senior person can exercise powers and functions in lieu of the Director where it is not appropriate for the Director to do so because of a conflict of interest. The Extradition Act will be modernised by Schedule 4 to the bill to improve not only the efficiency of the extradition process, but its safety. The amendments provide that once a person waives extradition, they are to remain in custody until they are physically surrendered to the requesting country or released under an appropriate order, saving time and cost. The Extradition Act will also be amended to provide police officers with the power to enter premises and use reasonable force when executing an extradition arrest warrant, reducing operational risks to the police and to the community. And the final schedule is Schedule 5, which is a technical amendment to the Telecommunications Interception and Access Act, and this is required to update terminology to reflect changes in Victorian legislation in relation to Integrity Oversight Victoria. Criminal law is complex, Deputy Speaker. It must be constantly examined to ensure that these complexities are being appropriately managed. But we in the community all play a role too. For the average Australian individual or business, there are things that we can all do to deter both opportunistic and deliberate crime. Now, some may say it's a shame that things are not as they were 40 years ago, when you could leave the keys in the ignition as you popped into the shop, but things aren't the same. The South Australian Police Commissioner made this very salient point last week when he asked fuel retailers to implement easily available and effective prepay systems to avoid people driving off without paying for fuel, an offence that has spiked given current market conditions. Prepay eliminates this. So, retailers, please implement it. Commissioner Stevens quite rightly warned that police would stop responding to call-outs about this issue because resources are so stretched. So to the community, lock your doors, use the alarm, don't leave the engine running as you go into the shop, don't leave your phone, wallet and other valuables lying around. Take sensible precautions, take simple acts of deterrence, because this helps police. And these acts, these deterrent acts that you can take, make it harder for an opportunistic or deliberately motivated perpetrator to commit an offence, which means police resources can be directed elsewhere to where the need is greater. Because we know that the need is great, Deputy Speaker, and this underscores the need for constant examination and measurement of the effectiveness of the criminal law system, which underscores the importance of this bill. I thank the Attorney-General for her work and commend the bill to the House.
I thank the member for Sturge. The question is that the bill now be read a second time, and I call the Attorney-General.
Thank you, Madam Acting Deputy Speaker. I thank members for their contribution to the debate on the Crimes and Other Legislation Amendment Omnibus No. 1 Bill 2026, which supports the effective administration of government by updating and improving key pieces of crimes-related legislation. This is critical to supporting law enforcement and related agencies to keep the community safe. The bill will ensure police have the necessary powers to keep passengers safe at Australia's newest airport in Western Sydney, modernise the way law enforcement agencies can apply for search warrants and assistance orders, and ensure the Australian Federal Police and the Australian Criminal Intelligence Commission continue to have appropriate access to critical powers to identify and disrupt serious technology-enabled criminal activity. The bill will improve the operation and efficiency of prosecution of serious drug offences, aligning Commonwealth procedures with state, territory and international approaches while retaining procedural fairness. The bill will enhance the efficient running of Australia's Federal Prosecution Agency by clarifying and modernising the Director of Public Prosecutions Act, including by streamlining the process of managing an actual, perceived or potential conflict of interest identified by the Director of Public Prosecutions. Frameworks in the Extradition Act will be clarified and modernised to streamline processes and ensure law enforcement officers are equipped with appropriate powers to effectively perform their functions. Finally, the bill will update terminology to modernise language and provide clarity and consistency across jurisdictions. The amendments in the Crimes and Other Legislation Amendment Omnibus No. 1 Bill 2026 modernise, streamline and clarify important provisions, ensuring law enforcement and related agencies can efficiently and effectively perform their critical functions. This bill is vital to ensuring our crimes legislation remains up to date and adequately supports our agencies to keep Australians safe. I commend the bill to the Chamber.
I thank the Attorney-General. The question is that the bill now be read a second time. I'll put the question. All those with that opinion say aye. Aye. Those against? Aye. No? No. Is it division required? Thank you. As it is necessary to resolve this question to enable further questions to be considered in relation to this bill, in accordance with Standing Order 195, the bill will be returned to the House for further consideration. And I call the clerk.
Government business statements, further statements on International Women's Day.
Are there any statements? And I call the member for Leyland.
I thank you, Deputy Speaker. Deputy Speaker, I rise today to celebrate and make some comments about International Women's Day, and I'm pleased to follow our Attorney-General, a female in this government's cabinet, because women belong in the House and the Senate, they belong in the cabinet, they belong in the Attorney-General's chair, they belong on the court and on the bench, they belong in the C-suites, they belong on the boards in this country. Women belong in every facet of our political, our social and our civic life. And last week in my electorate, I was really pleased to host my annual Lawler International Women's Day high tea. The event was an opportunity for some of our incredible local women to come together and celebrate our achievements as a community. I was joined by the federal member for Gorton, who shared her experience as a newly elected MP in the government. From community and sports organisations to teachers and students, from the arts, from local schools to scout groups and the local CFA, women from all walks of life filled the room. I shared with them some of the achievements of our second-term female majority government, and most importantly, I shared with them how we are delivering for women locally. I talked about the new contraceptive and endometriosis medications that have been listed on the PBS with scripts now just at $25, and I was pleased today to sit behind the Prime Minister as he called out a celebration around this government's actions to support women with endometriosis and terrible, terrible pelvic pain. The $800 million investment in women's health, $49 million in new Medicare items for longer specialist consultation to support additional services for women with complex gynaecological conditions, and new endometriosis and pelvic pain clinics like the one in Werribee. As I do every year, I ask the community to nominate local women to be recognised for the work they do locally. This year's categories included community, business, arts, sports, and our Woman of the Year. This year's recipients were extraordinary. They've created safe and inclusive spaces for women. They've created opportunity for growth. They've shared their love for the arts with others. They've dedicated countless hours to community sport and been tireless advocates for women's health. Their efforts have been pivotal and will continue to be for generations. I want to celebrate Kritika Sharma, who was nominated for community, Deborah Dickinson for business, Noor Bun Chin for arts, Angie Robinson for sport, and Chandra Katamban Patel, our Woman of the Year, who was involved in working with women in the Gujarati community to educate them about breast screening, and whose work actually resulted in real improved health outcomes for local women. It was a wonderful, wonderful event, and I want to thank everybody for their attendance and for joining in celebrating women. Of course, this year, the theme for International Women's Day was Balance the Scales. And I'm proud to be a member of a party that have for 30 years acted directly to balance those scales in this place. I'm proud to follow the member for Lawler, who was one of the first women elected in this place under our affirmative action, joined by the first female Attorney-General in this country, Nicola Roxon, who was elected the member for Jellybrand under that same program. It is amazing to see what that 30 years commitment to affirmative action has attained. Now we are taking real action in women's health. Now, on my social media pages, there's a bit of an attack happening around, oh, they're spending money on women's health. Well, of course we are. Of course we are. And for those who want to understand why, let me tell you this, that historically women were excluded deliberately from the data that determined our health policies, from the data that determined treatments. Why? Because they were perceived to be aberrant, that is, not consistent enough, because unlike men, our temperature varies. Unlike men, our hormonal patterns vary. And so the wisdom of the day suggested that, therefore, because of those inconsistencies, women should not be in the data. This has led to some outrageous things, where women were not used in the data that determined the height of a seatbelt in our cars, which meant that small women are actually still vulnerable in a car accident by the height of that seatbelt. So acting in good faith with 51% of the community and ensuring that they are now included in the data going forward and being included through breast screening processes and all sorts of ways that since coming to government we've made sure that we're fixing that data to have women included to inform the decisions we make in health. And I want to spend a little bit of time too celebrating, as chair of Women in Sport and as chair of the Parliamentary Friendship Group for Netball, I just want to share with people, and with people in my community, particularly mums and dads with daughters, I just want to share with you what sport meant to me growing up as a girl. On the netball court, on the volleyball court, on the basketball court, when I picked up a tennis racket, sport gave me permission to be completely and utterly 100% competitive. It gave me permission to be fearless. It gave me permission to be aggressive. It gave me permission to compete. This is something that all our girls deserve. And wherever you can find it for your daughters, to give them the capacity to go after being their true selves in every facet of their personality, you should do so. If that's debating, then that's fantastic. If it's on the sporting field, from my perspective, even better. And I want to give a shout out to the local sporting community who are living that balance the scales. My football clubs who are actively recruiting young girls to play football, so that we're going to be using our community assets like our football grounds forever the domain of male athletes. We're going to have girls running around on those footy fields, making sure that 51% of our community get to use the community assets that we've so heavily invested in across decades and decades. So to my football clubs, to my soccer clubs, to my basketball clubs, to my netball clubs, to my hockey club, to everyone who is actively supporting the recruitment of girls into their teams and onto their pitches and their courts, I want to thank you for your efforts. I want to thank the volunteers who run our local sporting groups. I want to thank the women who are involved in those sporting groups for doing the work to balance those scales. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Does the member for Reid seek to talk to this statement?
Oh, sorry.
No? Okay. I thank the member and I call the clerk.
Government business statements. Further statements on the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination.
Are there any statements? And I call the member for Reid.
Thank you. When I was a teenager growing up, the first time I questioned my place in this country was when the newly elected member for Oxley said in her first speech, "I and most Australians want our immigration policy radically reviewed and that of multiculturalism abolished. I believe we are in danger of being swamped by Asians." She went on to say, "They have their own culture and religion, form ghettos and do not assimilate." It was a message that made me feel deeply unwelcomed here, but it was also a reminder that our multicultural society can be attacked and threatened. It was a reminder that we all have a role to play to nurture and defend multicultural Australia, because a multicultural and multi-faith country does not come easily. It takes work from all of us, and that hard work is worth it. The International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination reminds us of a simple truth. A fair society does not happen by accident. Political leaders need to step up. Community leaders need to step up. All of us need to step up. Racial discrimination is not something confined to the past. It is something people still experience in their daily lives, in workplaces, in schools, in the media and online, and sometimes even at their places of worship. And that is why this day must be more than symbolic. It must be a call to action. In Australia, we are rightly proud of our multicultural success story. We are a country shaped by migration and by the belief that people from every background should be able to build a good life here. That belief has made us stronger. It has enriched us as a nation. It has helped make modern Australia the way it is. And I know it personally. In 1978, my parents were welcomed in this country. My family is of Chinese heritage, but my parents were born and raised in Laos, and they fled their homeland and were incredibly lucky Australia gave them refuge. When my parents came here, They had limited formal education and spoke very little English, but they worked hard in factories and they were able to find secure work with good conditions. And they gave my brother and I the work and education opportunities that they never had, and our family was able to thrive here. And it is a story shared by so many in my electorate of Reid and across the country. Families who came here seeking peace, safety and possibility. Families who worked hard so their children could have more opportunities than they did. Families who believed in Australia even before Australia fully believed in them. That is why racial discrimination cuts so deeply, because it tells people that no matter how much they contribute, no matter how hard they work, no matter how much they love this country, they will still be seen by some as less than fully belonging, and that is unacceptable. We have seen in recent years how quickly prejudice can harden into abuse, intimidation and hatred. We have seen racism directed at many communities. We have seen an unacceptable rise in anti-Semitism. The attack at Bondi last year was not only a shocking act of violence, it was a devastating blow to the Jewish community and to every Australian who believes in safety, dignity and respect. Jewish Australians are reporting that they feel less safe, and no one should have to think twice before walking into a synagogue or expressing their identity. We have also seen a deeply troubling rise in Islamophobia, with increasing threats made to the Muslim community and attacks on their mosques. March 15 is recognised internationally as the International Day to Combat Islamophobia. The date commemorates the Christchurch mosque attacks, the deadliest act of terrorism against Muslims in our region. And this year, that anniversary fell during the holy month of Ramadan, a time of deep spiritual reflection and heightened communal activity for Muslims. That coincidence makes the moment even more solemn and even more important, because no one should feel threatened for going to prayer. No one should fear abuse because they wear a hijab. We must be unequivocal. Anti-Semitism, Islamophobia and racism have no place in Australia. Not in our streets, not on our campuses, not online, and not in our politics. The safety of every community is a shared responsibility. In the face of grief and fear, we choose unity, we choose compassion. Protecting Australians from hate-motivated violence and intimidation is essential to safeguarding our democratic freedoms, our social cohesion, and our national identity. When any community feels unsafe, the strength of our national fabric is weakened. Recently, Senator Hanson said in a TV interview, "There are no good Muslims." She is wrong. She was wrong in 1996 when she stood up to say multiculturalism in Australia should be abolished, and she continues to be wrong today with her bigotry towards Muslims. But what makes me sad is for that young Muslim Australian whose political awakening may be made by those comments by Senator Hanson. It might make them question their place in this country, just as it made me question my place here decades ago. And this is my message to that young Muslim Australian and to all young Australians. You are not defined by your background, your faith, the postcode you grew up in, or the school that you went to. In this country, you are defined by the content of your character and what you want to do for others. Where the daughter of migrants fleeing conflict in Indochina can become a member of the Australian Parliament, representing one of the most diverse electorates in the country. And what drives me every day is to build a more inclusive and welcoming country, a country where every child, regardless of their race or religion, grows up knowing they belong. A country where our diversity is seen for what it is, one of our greatest national strengths. The Australia I believe in is one where good governments change lives by expanding opportunity, by defending dignity, by making sure every person can participate fully, by rejecting division, and by making it clear that hatred has no place in our democracy, because that is the promise of Australia. It is the promise that people from every background can build a life here in safety and with dignity. It is the promise that your name, your face, your faith, or your family history should never be a barrier to your future. So let us say it plainly. No to anti-Semitism, no to Islamophobia, and no to racism.
I thank the member. Are there any statements? And I call the member for Melbourne.
Speaker. In a place like Melbourne, it can be easy to point to diversity and feel like the job is done. We see diversity in our streets, in our schools, in the community that I represent and I'm proud of. But when we listen closely, we hear something else. We hear that for many people, the experience of this country is not the same. That even in places that look inclusive, people still carry moments where they are treated differently, where they are questioned, where they are made to feel like they are on the outside of something they should belong to. And if we are serious about eliminating racial discrimination, we have to start by listening to the people who have experienced it. Not explaining it away, not comparing it, but hearing it for what it is. The International Day of the Elimination of Racial Discrimination exists for a reason. It comes from a moment in 1960 in Sharpeville, South Africa, where people gathered to peacefully protest apartheid laws and were met with violence. Lives were lost. And the world was forced to confront what happens when racial injustice is allowed to go unchecked. That moment does not belong to one country, but to all. Because while Australia's story is different, it is not separate from the same question of fairness, of equality, and of who is made to feel like they belong. Because the story of this country begins with the oldest continuous civilisation on Earth. For tens of thousands of years, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people have cared for this land, built cultures of extraordinary depth, and passed knowledge from generation to generation. That history is not just in the past, in the distance, it is part of the present. And it reminds us that questions of fairness and justice in this country did not begin recently. They have been part of our story for a long time, and they are still part of our responsibility today. Now, if we want to understand what facing these questions look like in practice, we can look to my electorate of Melbourne, because this is where it is tested every day, not in theory, not in policy, but in real life. I see it when I walk through Chinatown, the largest continuous Chinese settlement in the Western world, where generations have built community, built businesses, and a sense of belonging in the heart of our city. I see it in Richmond and in Abbotsford, where the Vietnamese community has built an enduring place, shaping the streets, the culture, and the identity of the suburb. I see it in the Somali communities across inner Melbourne, where families are building lives, raising children, and starting to shape what our city will become next. As I spend time with these communities, I also hear something deeper, that discrimination has not disappeared. It's not always loud, it's not always called out, but it is still there. In comments that are brushed off, in assumptions that go unchallenged, in moments that people carry, even when they do not speak about them. That silence does not mean it is not there, it means that people have learnt to carry it. If we do not hear these stories or do not listen to the people living them every day, we risk building a picture of Australia that is only true for some people. But across Melbourne, people are not waiting for things to be perfect. We are building community anyway. The strength of this amazing city is in the places where people come together. Places like Yalden Parkville Cricket Club, where people from different backgrounds play side by side and build something shared over time. Places like Queen Victoria Market, where culture, food, language and tradition are where diversity is part of everyday life. In schools like Abbotsford Primary, where bilingual education is not treated as something different, but something core to who we can be. This is what cohesion looks like.
A division has been called for the House. The proceedings are suspended to enable honourable members to attend the division. The proceedings will resume when the Chair of the Federation Chamber is resumed at the conclusion of the division or subsequent divisions. I call the member for Melbourne.
Thank you, Speaker. This is what cohesion looks like. Not something declared, but something built. And it only holds if we keep choosing it, because even in a city like Melbourne, it can slip. It slips in the moment someone laughs off a comment that should have been called out, when a name gets shortened because it feels easier than correcting it, when someone walks into a room and quietly works out how much of themselves it is safe to show. It shows up in small decisions, a pause before speaking, a choice to stay quiet, a decision not to put your hand up this time. Not because people lack ability, but because they are reading the space around them. And these moments build. They follow people into classrooms, into workplaces, into the choices they make about what they go for and what they step back from. Over time, they shape who participates, who leads, and who feels like they belong. If we are serious about the kind of community we say we are, we cannot just point to diversity and assume that is enough. Speaker, there is a difference between celebrating diversity and defending it. Celebration is easy, defending it is much harder. It means acting when something is not right. It means listening when people tell us that something is not working. And it means being prepared to change when we are doing when the evidence is there. Because this is not about getting it right once, it's about continuing to learn and continuing to respond. This is where government matters. Because government has a responsibility not just to reflect the country, but to respond to it. And this government looks more like modern Australia than ever before. It reflects the diversity of the people it represents, and that matters. Because when people are in the room, their experiences are in the room too, and that shapes what gets heard. This government is taking action. Through the National Anti-Racism Framework, we are setting a clear direction for how institutions respond to racism. Through investment in multicultural community organisations, we are backing the people who are already doing the work on the ground. Through stronger protections in workplace and public life, we are making it clear that discrimination is not acceptable. And through education and community programs, we are helping build understanding earlier, so that the next generation expects something better. But we also know this: policy alone does not solve this. It only works if we stay connected to the people who are experiencing it. Speaker, I have had conversations with people in my life that have stayed with me. One was with my sister and her husband. Her husband is a Maori and has darker skin, and they were both asked a simple question: do you think Australia is racist? They answered the question at the same time.
A division has been called in the House. The proceedings are suspended to enable honourable members to attend the division. The proceedings will resume when the Chair of the Federation Chamber is resumed at the conclusion of the division or subsequent divisions.
14.
Member for Melbourne.
Thank you, Speaker. So my sister and her husband were asked, do you think Australia is a racist country? They answered at the same time. My sister, who looks like me, said no. Her husband said yes. And they both meant it, because they were speaking from lived experience. That moment has stayed with me because it shows something we have to be willing to face. That people can live in the same place, build the same life, and still experience this country in very different ways. And if we are serious about eliminating racial discrimination, we have to be willing to hold the truth. Not one version of the story, but all of them. Speaker, Melbourne shows us what is possible. A city where people do not just live side by side, they live together. A city built on contribution, on community, on people showing up for each other. But it also reminds us of something else, that this work is never finished. Because in the end, this comes down to something simple. When the moment comes, when something is said, when something is done, when something is not right, we all face the same choice: to stand up or to stand by. Speaker, I know what my choice is. For the people I represent, for the community that raised me, and for an Australia where no one should be made to feel like they do not belong, I will stand up, so they do not stand alone. Thank you.
Member for Kooyong.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Saturday the 21st of March was the International Day of Elimination of Racial Discrimination. Here in Australia, the commitment to eliminating racism has never been more important. Deputy Speaker, this is the picture of racial hatred in this country. During the COVID-19 pandemic, we saw a mainstreaming of racism and violence towards people of Chinese and Asian origin. I heard from constituents in Kooyong that they experienced racism against themselves and their family members for the first time ever during COVID. During the Voice referendum, we witnessed visible and widespread racism against First Nations people, adding to the systemic injustice that they endure every day. After October the 7th, 2023, both anti-Semitism and anti-Palestinian racism surged and have been an ongoing scourge in our communities since that time. Between 2023 and 2024, in-person Islamophobia more than doubled. Anti-Semitism, sadly, has also massively increased in the communities that I and many other members of this chamber represent. In recent years, anti-migration rallies and racially charged demonstrations have tested the strength of our multicultural identity. During the federal election campaign last year, a number of events in the electorate that I represent in Kooyong were disrupted by neo-Nazis, an unthinkable thing 5 or 10 years ago. In 2025, Indian migrants in our communities were subjected to targeted and abuse and propaganda, worsened in some cases by some of the colleagues from this place. And during last year's Hanukkah festivities, the unthinkable tragedy of the Bondi massacre affected all Australians, but most particularly those who are Jewish. Just last month, a prominent politician from this place again brazenly claimed that there are no good Muslims during the sacred month of Ramadan. Deputy Speaker, this is a brief and sadly incomplete picture of racism in Australia over just the last 5 years. Australia's Race Discrimination Commissioner, Giri Savaraman, says that there has never been a more urgent time to address racism in this country, and I think he's right. Many Australians are scared. They're scared for their safety, they're scared of racial intolerance, they're scared, with good reason, of unprovoked violence. It's not a problem that we can ignore, that we can put off to the next electoral cycle. It's a problem that demands urgent action now. Deputy Speaker, in November 2024, the Australian Race Commissioner delivered the National Anti-Racism Framework, a roadmap to eliminating racism in Australia. It's the most comprehensive plan in Australia's history. It's our first whole-of-government, whole-of-society framework designed to address racism at a national level. It was developed through extensive consultation with hundreds of communities and hundreds of organisations across the country. More than 50 civil society organisations have joined together and have asked for national leadership from the Albanese government to fully fund and fully implement that national anti-racism framework. But 16 months later, we're still waiting for the Albanese government to respond. 16 months. So are we really surprised when the Prime Minister and the Home Affairs Minister are booed at a mosque in Lakemba during Eid prayers? What happened last week in Lakemba was just a visible expression of a deep anger from many Australian communities. Anger at what they see as seeming indifference. Anger at a government which many people feel has allowed division to be sown and to fester. For 16 months now, the government has chosen to neglect a report which makes it clear that racism in Australia is not just an interpersonal issue, it is deeply systemic. It exists within our employment structures. It exists, and sadly it manifests in our provision of healthcare. It exists in our justice system, in our education system and in the media. And when our institutions fail to address these inequalities, they do more than just ignore or overlook racism, they enable it. The National Anti-Racism Framework confronts this reality. It's honest about the systems that sustain racism in this country. Its primary recommendation calls for a modest but important first step, the establishment of a national task force to begin implementation. We haven't taken even that first step. The Attorney-General has indicated that the framework is being considered and that a holistic approach must be taken to ensure the rights and freedoms of all Australians. But what's holistic about doing nothing? Racism is not going to disappear on its own while the government hesitates and obfuscates. Deputy Speaker, in December 2025, I, with crossbench colleagues, wrote to the Prime Minister requesting a Royal Commission into the horrible events at Bondi. And I was really pleased to see the Prime Minister act to initiate the Royal Commission into anti-Semitism and social cohesion. It's a really important step to addressing the scourge that is anti-Semitism in this country. But there are two important takeaways from that Royal Commission that I would like the government to heed. The first is that Dennis Richardson's resignation from the Royal Commission in recent weeks sends a clear message that intelligence findings simply cannot wait until December, that we have urgency in ensuring that all Australians are safe. And second, that selective action is not enough. We have to take decisive steps as a country to address all forms of racism. That includes taking the next step, bringing the framework to life, formally endorsing it, acting on its primary recommendation to establish the National Anti-Racism Task Force, and then funding and implementing the recommendations in that framework in partnership with our communities. At a time when racism and division are deepening, there has never been a more pressing and a more urgent time for the government, for the Prime Minister and for all members of his cabinet and all representatives of our community to demonstrate real national leadership on racism.
Member for Dunkley.
Deputy Speaker, I rise today to mark the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination held on the 21st of March, a day that calls on all of us to reflect and to act. My values have been shaped by faith, by community and by a deep belief in the inherent dignity of every human being. I was raised with a simple but enduring principle, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. It is a principle shared across cultures, faiths and philosophies, and one that speaks directly to respect, responsibility and inclusion. Yet today, Deputy Speaker, many Australians feel a deep unease around the world, and here at home, we are witnessing a troubling rise in division, fuelled by fear, misinformation and the deliberate misuse of race, religion and identity, often for political gain. I hear this directly from my community of Dunkley, particularly from young people who observe political debates, and they ask whether this is the future we want to create because that is what we appear to be choosing. They see conflict abroad. They see rising anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. They see the ongoing impact of racism on First Nations people, and they wonder whether social cohesion is slipping from our grasp, if it is an aspiration, a dream, an unrealistic goal. The people that speak to me about their fears and apprehension feel despair, while others begin to mimic the behaviour they see, believing division to be the norm. That should concern every one of us in this place. History teaches us that social cohesion is not automatic. It must be protected, nurtured and operationalised, deliberately and consistently. Australia's strength has always been found in our diversity, not despite of it, but because of it. We are a nation built by people from every corner of the globe, united by conformity, not by conformity, but by shared democratic values, fairness, respect and equality. My own life reflects this diversity. I have close family connections within the Jewish community. I have worked with and learned from Jewish leaders and business people whose commitment to community responsibility and social justice shaped my career. While my mother introduced me to Buddhism and its teachings, including compassion, service and universal acceptance. These experiences reinforced a simple truth. While beliefs and traditions may differ, the core values of humanity are shared. This understanding further deepened through my work with First Nations communities. From my early adulthood, I committed myself to learning, listening and working alongside Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander leaders, leading a national Indigenous youth leadership program and learning from respected leaders across the country challenged my perspectives and strengthened my resolve to stand against racism and discrimination in all its forms. As the member for Dunkley, I took an oath to serve all Australians without fear or favour. That responsibility demands more than words. While Australia is a signatory to the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, a commitment that requires us not only to reject racism, but to actively prevent it. Eliminating racial discrimination is not symbolic. It is a legal and moral responsibility that safeguards social cohesion, human dignity, and democratic stability. It requires all of us, when we see it, to call it out, to protect communities from discrimination and to model the respect we expect of others. In recent weeks, I have seen the best of this spirit in my community at the holy celebrations at the Sri Shiva Vishnu Temple, with people of all backgrounds coming together in joy, colour replacing division, celebration replacing fear. At citizenship ceremonies, I'm regularly reminded that Australia is home to more than 3,000 cultures, each representing our shared national history. I am proud to represent a community that is home to the largest Hindu temple in the Southern Hemisphere, to Sikh Volunteers Australia, whose service embodies generosity and compassion, and to the Ahmadiyya Muslim community, whose guiding principle, love for all, hatred for none, offers a powerful lesson for our times. Deputy Speaker, these local experiences are reflected on the global stage. In recent months, Australia has welcomed overseas leaders, including Mark Carney, the President of Canada, the King and Queen of Denmark, and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. This past week, we have also hosted Exercise Kakadu, bringing together naval forces from 18 nations, including Canada, New Zealand, Japan, India, Indonesia, Singapore, the Philippines, and the United States. These moments matter. They remind us that the elimination of racial discrimination is critical to ensuring social cohesion. Our national security and our contribution to global peace depend on our ability to live together with trust, respect and solidarity. Cohesion at home strengthens credibility abroad. Deputy Speaker, social cohesion begins with leadership. Those of us honoured to hold positions of influence must understand that our words and our actions weigh far more beyond this chamber. Leadership is not just about what we say, it is about what we demonstrate. If we want a cohesive, respectful and resilient nation, then those in positions of power must walk the talk every day with integrity. We cannot let leaders say there are no good Muslims. Cohesion is not weakened by difference. It is weakened by political point scoring, not grounded in the values of respect. The elimination of racial discrimination requires leadership from all of us in this place. Leadership that rejects division, policy that promotes inclusion, and everyday actions that reinforce belonging, including the implementation of the National Anti-Racism Framework. Deputy Speaker, if we are to remain true to the values that define Australia, fairness, respect and equality, then we must actively choose unity over fear, inclusion over exclusion, and hope over despair. Let us recommit to the simple yet powerful truth that our shared humanity is greater than any difference. In doing so, we strengthen not only our communities, but the very fabric of the nation we are proud to call home.
Member for Maribyrnong.
Deputy Speaker, I move that the Federation Chamber now do adjourn.
Is there a seconder? Member for McPherson.
Motion.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. All of those of the opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary say no. I think the ayes have it. The Federation Chamber stands adjourned until 9:30 a.m. on Thursday, the 26th of March, 2026.